Hello, you're watching TVP World News. I'm Jan Szerebiński. Polish leaders attended solemn ceremonies early on Monday to mark the 86th anniversary of the Nazi German invasion and bombing of Polish territory at the start of World War II. President Karol Nawrocki, Prime Minister Donald Tusk, Defence Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz and Parliament Speaker Szymon Hołownia gave speeches and laid wreaths to honour the heroes. The ceremonies took place at Westerplatte, a Polish military outpost on a peninsula in Gdańsk, where exactly 86 years ago, on the 1st of September 1939, at 4:45 a.m., Germany fired the first shots of the war. A small force of around 210 Polish soldiers heroically defended the outpost for 7 days against overwhelming German forces, becoming a symbol of Polish resistance. The 1939-1945 German occupation of Poland killed more than 5 million Poles. The country also suffered huge losses to its infrastructure, including the destruction of roads, railways, bridges and factories. In his speech, President Karol Nawrocki called for Germany to make war reparations to Poland for, and I quote, the common good. Prime Minister Donald Tusk, on the other hand, stressed that Poles must be wise and understand who their enemy is and who is their ally.
We must be so strong, we must be so wise, we must be so united that no one from any part of the world will ever again think of attacking our homeland. We must be wise to understand where this great threat comes from today, and with it whom we should unite in the effort to defend Poland and the entire Western world, our civilization, which is the civilization of freedom. Poland, Europe, NATO, our allies, this is the result of the lesson we learned from the loneliness of 1939.
European capitals are preparing, and I quote, pretty precise plans for potential troop deployments to Ukraine as part of post-war security guarantees, according to EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who said these words in an interview with the Financial Times. Von der Leyen made her statement during a tour of eastern EU states, where she focused on defence spending and military readiness. In the interview published last night, von der Leyen said there was a clear roadmap for possible deployments, adding that security guarantees are paramount for a lasting peace in Ukraine. She also confirmed that the plan and the discussion could involve tens of thousands of EU troops, supported by US command and control systems, surveillance and intelligence assets. According to von der Leyen, those arrangements have already been agreed upon during last month's meeting in Washington between Donald Trump, Volodymyr Zelensky and European Union leaders. While Brussels discusses scenarios for possible EU troop deployment, Berlin is pushing back on the idea. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz stressed that, and I quote, no one is talking about ground troops in Ukraine at this point. Instead, he argued the focus must stay on strengthening Ukraine's army now and shaping security guarantees that will lock in its independence once a ceasefire becomes possible.
We are talking about trying to formulate security guarantees in the event of a ceasefire. And the number one priority is to support the Ukrainian army so that they can defend this country in the long term. That is the absolute priority, and we will start doing that now. Many things can only be accomplished once there is a ceasefire. This requires an agreement with Russia, and this agreement will, of course, have conditions on both sides. On our side, the condition is that Ukraine retains its independence in the long term, retains its freedom of alliance, retains its freedom. So that is what we are working on. No one is talking about ground troops in Ukraine at this point.
Ukrainian authorities detained a suspect in the fatal shooting of Ukrainian politician Andriy Parubi. Aged 54, Parubi was shot dead in Lviv on the 30th of August by an assailant disguised as a courier, prompting a countrywide manhunt. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made the announcement on social media. As stated by Zelensky, the suspect has given an initial testimony and an investigation is underway to establish the circumstances surrounding the murder. Ukraine's Interior Minister Ihor Klimenko added that the suspect was carefully prepared, studied the victim's movements, mapped out his route and planned an escape. Klimenko also congratulated employees of the Security Service of Ukraine who within the first 24 hours of the murder were already on the shooter's trail. The summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Tianjin, China, enters its second and final day. Among the attendees are the presidents of China, Russia and Belarus, as well as the Prime Minister of India. The summit comes as Beijing and New Delhi face US tariffs as well as scrutiny over their relationship with Moscow. During the summit, Chinese President Xi Jinping met with the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, who said that New Delhi is committed to further strengthening ties with its largest trading partner. Apart from the meeting with Modi, Xi Jinping also met with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. The two sides signed multiple bilateral cooperation agreements in areas such as science, finance, media, transportation and customs. During the second day of the summit, the Indian Prime Minister sat down with Russian leader Vladimir Putin. Putin is also expected to engage in other bilateral meetings, including with the leaders of Iran and Turkey. The summit in Tianjin closely coincides with the celebrations of the end of World War II in China, which will take place on the 3rd of September. The Victory Day parade will be attended by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un as well as Vladimir Putin. Poland's newly sworn-in President Karol Nawrocki is taking further steps in his diplomatic pursuits as he heads to Washington to meet with US President Donald Trump on his first foreign visit. On the agenda is the future of US troops on the Polish soil, as well as economic and digital cooperation in light of the recent tariffs. The visit comes as Polish leaders face divisions over the future of Polish support for Ukraine. Zuzanna Jurek has more.
A meeting of two presidents, a test for Poland to make a diplomatic case for Europe to the White House. The newly inaugurated President Karol Nawrocki is heading to Washington for bilateral talks with US President Donald Trump on the 3rd of September. This isn't the first time that these two will meet. During the Polish presidential campaign, Nawrocki received an endorsement from the Trump camp. Some experts believe Nawrocki is primed to be an advocate for maintaining strong transatlantic cooperation.
Poland is the highest defense spender in NATO, which is a big deal to President Trump. These two leaders, they like each other already. They have a lot in common. They're both sort of disruptors of the status quo.
There are approximately 10,000 American soldiers stationed in Poland, and Warsaw is keen to maintain or even boost their presence. At the same time, the US is due to finalize its global posture review in the upcoming weeks.
The US is looking into the numbers, into the way in which the forces, the elements of US military footprint is distributed. The issue is, as far as Poland is concerned, that if there are changes, including some movements of troops, they do not affect Poland and the eastern flank.
Troops are one issue, but Poland, which is topping NATO's defense spending charts at 4.7% of GDP, has gone on a substantial shopping spree to modernize and expand its weaponry, with about $50 billion worth of procurement contracts allocated to US contractors alone. This includes the 32 F-35 fighter jets.
There is a lot to gain, not just for Poland, Europe, but also for US, to even upgrade this special relationship.
However, trade relations do not pertain to military equipment exclusively. It is the Americans who will build the first nuclear power plant in Poland.
For President Trump and his administration, energy dominance, as he calls it, is a real big priority. It's also part of the strategic global competition particularly with China and Russia.
But it's not all love between Washington and Warsaw, as the Polish government is considering implementing a digital tax, which, when implemented by other EU member states, became another point of contention in US-EU relations.
The European Union declined publicly many times, and they said that digital taxes or enforcement of other digital regulation is not part of this tariffs package. But at the same time, we are seeing lots of pressures coming from the states.
Nawrocki's visit is also clouded by domestic issues. It comes as the president goes head-to-head with the ruling centrist coalition, attempting to expand the role of his office in leading the country's foreign policy.
Is trying to change the rules of Polish politics and go outside the Polish constitution. This is quite dangerous, and it's going to be quite a spectacle and a power struggle.
The two branches have competing visions on a fundamental issue: Ukraine. Nawrocki championed and maintains a Ukraine-skeptic view. The coalition government, on the other hand, though divided on putting boots on the ground as part of any peacekeeping mission, remains united in ongoing support for Kiev.
Europe, including Poland, should participate in designing any future ceasefire and later peace. We also care very much that peace prevails in our region, because this will also be very good for our security.
In a highly commented move, the presidential palace leaked a one-page extract from a letter of instructions prepared by the government, detailing its priorities for the DC talks. The leak reverberated through the Polish political scene.
The government's position on the president's visit to the US was not formally classified, but if I were the head of state, I would check which of his advisors was foolish enough to leak it.
TVP World sources at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs made it clear the leak is not just a demonstration of a lack of cooperation between the two, it undermines Poland's negotiating position with the US. Sources also raised concern if Nawrocki could overpromise and underdeliver on the commitment he makes in Washington in a bid to strengthen his relationship with Trump.
He is likely to demonstrate lack of sufficient political skills and sufficient political finesse.
As he heads to the States, Ukraine, Poland and Europe hold their breath as Nawrocki executes his first attempt as advocate of the continent's best interests. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
The Polish seaport of Gdańsk, a city of freedom and solidarity, celebrated 31st of August as one of the most important dates in its history. The so-called Gdańsk Agreement, signed on this day, allowed for the creation of the Solidarity Trade Union, the largest anti-communist opposition movement in Europe. 45 years later, the city is vibrant, youthful, and attracts millions of tourists.
On August 31st, Poles commemorate the signing of the historic Gdańsk Agreement, which allowed for the creation of the Solidarity Trade Union. In August of 1980, the firing of a beloved crane operator Anna Walentynowicz sparked a strike here in the Gdańsk shipyard, at the time known as the Lenin shipyard. The communist regime had a habit of crushing any dissent with deadly force, but this time the strike spread across the country like wildfire, and Warsaw had no choice but to negotiate. So on August 31st, the Gdańsk Agreement was signed, ending the strike and beginning a new chapter in the history of Poland. Both former and current members of Solidarity movement gathered here to celebrate Poland regaining its freedom.
At that time, we were full of hope, faith and confidence in victory, and we would have paid even with our lives for Poland to be free and sovereign.
The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk took part in the events of 1980 as a young student.
When 45 years ago we left the Gdańsk shipyard after the victorious Great Strike shouting Solidarity and Lech Wałęsa, we did not yet know that in that moment these words would be heard in every corner of the world. How proud we were that thanks to Poland, solidarity had become one of the fundamental values of the entire West, alongside freedom, equality and respect for every human being. Solidarity was not just a slogan at the time, but something that truly united the Polish people, as well as entire nations and their leaders. It was a real miracle that a Gdańsk shipyard worker, the Pope and the President of the United States all thought the same way at the time.
The Solidarity Trade Union remains active to this day, and the citizens of Gdańsk, both young and old, celebrate the revolutionary history of their city. From Gdańsk, for TVP World, Natalia Komarow.
And that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and please stay with us here on TVP World.